Hey everyone, welcome back to another ecosystem episode of Retention Chronicles. Super excited for our guest today, Drew Himel. Am I saying that right? Himel?
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome. Probably should have asked that before, um, but yeah, Drew is founder and CEO of the PCR agency, which is now Fireside. So going through a rebrand right now, which is just an awesome time to have him on and talk through all of the strategies and thoughts behind that and what the rebrand will mean, not just for his current customers, but for the new customers, the new clients that he's serving moving forward. But before we get into that, Drew would love to start by how we always do, a couple things that you're excited about in your personal life, and then we'll get to talking shop.
Oh, I love it. Personal life. So I am a very amateur little biohacker. I have a cold plunge, infrared sauna, red light therapy.
Wow.
I experiment with everything. And over the last month, I did an elimination diet. So I cut out caffeine, alcohol, sugar, beef. I was just eating essentially like fruits, vegetables, chicken, and fish. And so very hard. You realize like how addicted you are to all these,
Yeah.
whether it be caffeine or alcohol or sugar. I felt miserable for the first week. And then after that felt unbelievable. And I think that coupled with getting back into yoga, I'm doing 6 a.m. yoga in the morning. And yeah, I just feel like $1,000,000. Like I just am riding high for sure. So getting through some of the hard parts, but the discipline and everything else has been pretty amazing. So yeah, that's probably what I'm most excited about over the last couple of weeks. Boring and in some ways, but
It's not
very
at all. I was
real.
just gonna say we're not gonna get to talking shop for a second because I have so many questions. First and foremost, you said it's been about a month, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, what was the hardest thing to cut out?
Coffee. Yeah. I think about 6 days in, my girlfriend and I looked at each other. We're like, we don't know if we can do this anymore. It's just like, I mean, we felt if you've ever had like a big night out and you're sitting on your couch the next day not wanting to move, we had a few days of that without, just felt pretty miserable when your body's like going through this reset. So yeah, I think coffee was by far and away the hardest. But now we've reintroduced coffee. So you like slowly reintroduce different foods and see how your stomach reacts and things like that to find food sensitivity. And I'm like, I have a cup of coffee and that's why I'm on 1 cup of coffee right now. And I'm like wired. Where
Perfect energy.
I was drinking like 3 a day and you just, overstimulated and things like that. So yeah, coffee was definitely the hardest.
Wow.
Okay, that's very interesting. I didn't drink coffee for like a really long time, and then I don't know. I don't know what brought it back, but I think out of necessity, I needed I needed more energized hours in my day. I think of all, like, I love meat, so that would be everything that you said. I can't imagine going a month without booze, especially in like our line of work where we're always happy hours, and the work gatherings are oftentimes as big of a party as I'm having with my friends on a weekend. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would imagine that was hard. Did you do any like work conferences or happy hours that you had to like really be on your best behavior to avoid it?
No, I did not this time, but I always, so this was like sober October, kind of coordinated with that too, which was nice.
Got it.
But I usually do 1 or 2 months a year. And last year I did, or this year I did March as well. And I was at Expo West, which is for, the big food and beverage. So I couldn't really sample any of the products. And I was going to all the happy hours and events and yeah, I stayed strong. I didn't drink, which was challenging. It's a discipline and self-control. I like to push myself and see if I can do it because I do love, glass of red wine or a
Right.
Negroni or anything else.
Yeah.
But it's you just want to see if you can. And then once you get in a little bit of a rhythm, I also have this Whoop.
Yeah.
It's just been amazing to see. It's like, I think 29 of the last 31 days I've had green recovery, where like, that's your heart rate variability, just your overall health and how much sleep. My sleep quality is like through the roof. So all those things you realize, like alcohol or different things, the impact that it has. So
my friends love the Whoop watch. Like they're like, oh my God, look at my recovery. I'm like, oh, why do you want to know? Like,
yeah, there's some like public shaming or like private shaming where, but it's honestly, we give everybody in our company at Fireside a free Whoop and a subscription and stuff like that. But it's also interesting too, for some of my staff is like, I don't know if I want you knowing that I've had a big pain on like a Tuesday. I was like, fair.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
That's a cool application of it though. Like everyone at work kind of be like, oh, how are you like recovering? How are you stressed? All that. Yeah.
Yeah. I love talking about it. We could do a whole podcast on it. So, I want to try and give the team the same thing because I know the impact that it has on me. So
yeah, that's awesome. I same thing, Mariah. Like every one of my friends who has a Whoop is like the most diehard fan, the biggest advocate. I hope that they have a referral program, because if they don't, they're missing a huge opportunity. Yeah, and then I'm also curious, last thing, and then we can move on. I do yoga as well. Do you notice like a difference in that? Because I can definitely notice, like if I do yoga on a Sunday after a night out, like I am nowhere near as coordinated, as balanced, as like able to like be in the moment. And so I'm wondering if you've noticed a difference there as well.
No, I mean, I played basketball all my life, and it's just really hard on your body. And I'm 38 and my knees are starting to like break down. I'm getting like elbow issues. And I finally went to a PT, like physical therapist, and he's like, well, you can foam roll every single day for like 30 minutes. I'm like, man, I gotta be honest with you. The likelihood of me doing that is not very high. He's like, well, go to yoga 3 to 5 days a week. And so I'm a month in, elbow pain because I'm like my chest and shoulders are more open and flexible. The knee pain is slowly starting to go away. I'm like, I don't want to be 50, 60 years old and not able to move. And so, that's been, and then, if I have luckily I haven't had a rough night because I've been doing the diet along with it, but it would be interesting to see with like alcohol and impact on some of the other items too. But
yeah, it is. But yeah, I love yoga for all the same reasons. And actually I play basketball as well.
Oh, you do? Oh, cool. Yeah.
I played Tuesday night, went to yoga Wednesday, and like the difference there, the recovery time is so much better. Cause like even for me, I used to play like 4 or 5 times a week. Now I can only play like twice because I have recovery time that needs to happen. But knees.
My brother tore his Achilles, and I saw that. I haven't played since. But I'm actually going out to LA next week because I have a brother who's 17 years younger than me, so he's playing in college. So the whole family's going out to. He's got his season opener next week, so going to check that out. So it'll be. But I used to be able to beat him one-on-one, but now I'm too old and slow. So
this is making me want to do yoga. I've like gone in and out of phases with it. But I was a rower, and so like the recovery period definitely necessary. But like the foam rolling, you're just saying like 30 minutes foam rolling. I was like,
It's so good for you, but there's nothing. I hate it. I literally hate it. And so yoga, like it's the flexibility, the mobility, but actually the core strength and the mental aspect. I mean, and my girlfriend forever was like, let's go. And I'm like, nope. And then she's like, so a physical therapist had to tell you to do yoga, and now you're going. I'm like,
ironic, huh?
Certain things, a doctor might be better suited, or than the girlfriend. That's awesome. But I go to the hot room in Indianapolis, Mariah, and it's hot, it's heated, it's great. They have like HIIT classes, they have vinyasa, they have regular yoga. I'm in there all the time.
So. Yeah, mine's heated too, and they have they heat the room, and then they have these fans. And I always like get right next to the fan and point it right at me. I'm like, if I'm going to be in here, I want to get a sweat too. So,
right.
Yeah.
So the fans make it hotter or cool you down?
It's like almost a convection fan. So it just pumps out a lot of heat.
I'm the same way. That's why I asked. Like if I'm going to be hot and anticipating being hot, I want like the full experience.
Oh yeah.
Also there's also like the factor of if I'm going to spend an hour here, I want it to be like as effective as possible. So let's make the most of this time, right?
Exactly.
It's terrible for those around me because I just have a puddle of sweat
totally.
all around me. Like sometimes we have to do a certain pose. My leg has to slide off the mat. It's just not good for anybody.
It's acceptance, It's fine. That's funny.
I know that feeling well. Awesome. That was one of the best openers I think we've had. A lot of connections there. Okay, let's shift focus. So like I said at the top, you recently rebranded. I'd love to start going back, even if it's cool with you, Drew, before PCR. And chat a little bit, learn a little bit about your career path up until that point. And then we can sort of get into the rebrand and dive a little bit deeper there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's not much in the career path before. I had a internship with the Jacksonville Jaguars, unfortunately my hometown NFL team that has been pretty much terrible for 20 years.
Beat us, the Colts every time we come there. So got that.
That's true. So a brief stint there. Then I went into finance for all of like 6 months, and then just realized I was kind of like unemployable. So I decided to start my own business. Taught myself web design when I was 23. Read SEO for Dummies and started an agency. Wow. I mean, to call it an agency, it was me working out of my living room couch selling air conditioning contractors and plumbers like $300 a month to get them on, Google and drive leads back in 07, 08. So like, it was pretty challenging because I started the business probably at the worst time. But maybe it was the best time too, just because it was really hard. And then, that we were full service doing everything, SEO, PPC, social media. And it was 100% jack of all trades, master of none. And I was miserable. I still remember to this day, a client called me on Christmas Eve and was like, if you don't show up to my office right now, I will sue you for all you're worth. And I was like, well, I'm not really worth all that much. So it's not that big of a deal. But I had to drive in there and he proceeded to yell at me for an hour and a half. And it was really hard. But after that, I was like, okay, I want to focus more on like the value that we provide and what does that look like versus keyword rankings or traffic. And it was really cool. We came across HubSpot, 11, 12 years ago. And I was like, this is it. They focus more on like the ROI of the efforts, and it's more of the owned ecosystem, like landing pages and lead nurturing. And so we went full throttle with HubSpot. We were their fastest partner to ever reach like platinum status. I think we were one of 6 out of 4,000 in their ecosystem. I spoke at their conference a bunch of times, and it was just a really important shift because instead of selling the air conditioning contractor to do SEO for $500, we're like, what is the impact of 20 new customers if we can improve conversion from website traffic to sales and lead conversion from leads to customers? And when you start paying that, we upsold them to like 10, 15,000 a month because they're like, oh, if you can sell us 2 more air conditioning units a month, like sign us up. So that was a huge shift for us, and it went really, really well. And then, went from just a small local company to regional to national, where, we worked with some great accounts. We worked with Major League Baseball. We worked with Lyft. We actually helped the Chargers moved from San Diego to LA. I moved out to LA and helped with that. Worked with like Standing Rock, which was a really important campaign around like indigenous rights. And so, it was an important shift for us. And then about 3 years ago, we were doing a lot of work in the digital space, obviously. And we had never really done much with e-commerce. We had a short stint with Huckberry in 16 and 17, and they were on Klaviyo. I couldn't even pronounce it. I didn't really know what it was. We did some like basic optimizations for them, and but Dan Gilbert, who owns Quicken Loans and Rocket Mortgage and the Cleveland Cavaliers, we worked with his private equity group, and he owned an entity called Fathead, which you remember as a kid, they. So we did a full, like, almost like transformation for them where they were like unprofitable. They were on like a custom e-com. And that was like our first real foray into e-com, where we got them on Shopify Plus, we got them on Klaviyo, and did a complete turnaround. I mean, they were unprofitable. They had full-time people just designing emails because they couldn't use templates. Like, it was just crazy how antiquated it was. And we're like, maybe there's something here. And so we went the same thing. We made an important decision to go full throttle into the e-com space. And then right around that time, COVID hit. And so we saw even like further mass adoption. And it just made sense because everything we focus on is ROI and value. And in the D2C space, like, that's the easiest thing to be able to like track is, how effective are your efforts across all these channels. And so, within that, we've now completed 60 plus projects in a few years in that space. And yeah, it's just further, kind of enhancing our, capability where, really what we do at the end of the day is how do you drive higher customer lifetime value and decrease the cost of acquiring those customers. So we do like UX, CRO, retention marketing, SMS, email. And then the app ecosystem, there's like 6,000 Shopify apps that are out there. We help. We help the clients figure out which ones are best and consolidate that and streamline it to kind of optimize the customer experience to drive more value. So
that's awesome. I didn't realize the start in the HubSpot space. So when you went down that path, were you mostly working with B2B brands then, or was it a mix of both?
It was a mix of both. We took those air conditioning contractors and got them on HubSpot because they had like service industry kind of like technology that was pretty antiquated. So we were able to customize HubSpot to be a little bit more custom fit for what their business model was. But then we did have a lot of, B2B as well. But even the chargers we had on HubSpot, a lot of these other, much larger brands too, like Home Depot, we put on HubSpot, one of their subsidiaries, not the main Home Depot. So yeah, it was 50-50. So we had the strategy and the process and the framework. But yeah, we would have like a B2B client over here, a sports league over there. It's just, and so now we exclusively only focus on, digital strategy for people trying to figure out their, D2C e-commerce, business model.
And what I know you talked about that a little bit, and what I heard was like what attracted you to e-commerce, which is really interesting, is like, I think the ability to properly attribute like value based on like inputs and outputs and properly attribute revenue and all of the other things that drive it. Is that right? And is there anything else that sort of made you think this is sort of the future of commerce and it's where I need to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was very much like fundamental where like, to track, I mean, we even did stuff with like restaurant groups and everything else. It's very difficult to get the ROI. And so for us, it is always around like, what is the value of our efforts? And so within e-com, everything is trackable. If anything, there's like too much data for these brands to make heads or tails of what's actually going on and what's effective and what's not. So that was really the main, I would say, catalyst. I did not know that, we would face a global pandemic and all these other things, that people were going to buy more online and things of that nature. I would not give myself any credit towards that. But it was like, it just made a lot of sense in terms of like the fundamentals. And, the shift for us too was like SEO. It's like, 6 to 9 months, and hopefully we get you rankings increase, or social media, and you're dealing with like iOS updates around performance marketing. So we feel like we kind of get the answers to the test where we could look at how much traffic you have, what's your existing conversion rate, how much revenue is coming from, your ESP and email and SMS programs, what is your customer lifetime value? And then we could say, oh, we feel very confident, engage us, we're going to make this ROI positive for you, very quickly. So
yeah, that makes sense. It's funny you said that the too much data thing. I was just talking to someone yesterday about a stat that I saw that was like, I forget exactly what it was, I'll butcher it probably, but it was like, if you actually added up the attribution from all of your different tools, you'd be like 6 or 7 times more, bringing in 6 or 7 times more revenue than you actually are. So that's, I totally agree. I think that it's something that we're focused on too, actually internally at Malomo, is like figuring out how to better attribute like Malomo attributable revenue. And I think that's a hot topic sort of across the board. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that. And also, when you started and you put Fathead on Shopify and Klaviyo, and you also talked about how you sort of are a thought leader and a advisor for your merchants on what tools they should use in the broader Shopify stack. Curious how you think about what tools clients should use, if you have like a preferred stack that you like to work with, or if you sort of take the approach of it's not a one size fits all thing. Some tools are better suited for, some tools are great for client A, and other tools would be great for client B. So I just threw a lot at you, but I think they're also kind of like connected. So the reason for bringing them all together.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to the latter question around the tech stack and app ecosystem, we 100% have a point of view around like what's going to be best, and we do factor in their business model, ease of use, because we don't always say Klaviyo. We've actually onboarded a fair amount onto HubSpot still if they need a true CRM. We're platinum partners of both, but we did this big migration with he's an author, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and all around like mindfulness and meditation. And he had events, he had digital merchandise, he had physical merchandise, he had a paid membership club, he had courses. It's very difficult to streamline that data strategy and like user journey just using Klaviyo. So we use Shopify within HubSpot to act as like the true CRM, to be able to like manage all those inputs in a way that I think Klaviyo is working towards as like a true, like almost like CDP, but they're not quite there. So within that, we have that point of view. And then there is I'd say the tech stack typically does look like, Shopify with Shopify Plus, email and SMS. We do prefer, kind of Klaviyo. We love Elevar for Google Analytics, like cleanup and like tag management, because we do so much with like conversion rate optimization. Site speed is a big topic, and people just don't realize they could have like 60, 70 scripts from like Pinterest tag and this tag, like all these different tags. So Elevar does server-side tagging, which is just a fancy way to say like it doesn't unnecessarily slow down your site, and helps you kind of manage that and turn it on and off. If you're not advertising on Pinterest, there's no need to have a Pinterest kind of tag on there. So they're great. We have a great relationship with them. Akendo or Junip for reviews. We love both of those, just depending on the sophistication. If it's an earlier stage brand, Junip I think does a really good job. And then Nosto for some of our like more advanced clients that are looking at more personalization. SearchSpring for search. And then I think for what you guys do, and that's how we originally got the relationship, was with Mudwater, which is an incredible brand, where Shane I think is so driven by the customer experience, and he wants to make sure every touch point is an opportunity to whether it's reintroduce the brand or put something else together. They've really done I think a great job. And so with you guys, like when they had the issue, I think more than anything, where it's what we looked at from an audit perspective is they were sending out like 8 messages to the client to the customer before they even receive the package. And so we wanted to like streamline that because it was coming from so many different areas. And so with Klaviyo and Malomo integration, we were able to build more of like, instead of going to a crappy like UPS tracking page, we're able to really utilize that as an experience, because it is, people are like, what is this? Is it actually mud or like, and all these adaptogens, and I'm used to my coffee. And so you could put, videos on there, you could put recipes. And it became one of their top performing flows, was just people tracking, the shipping and the notifications. So I think, that's going to become more and more important. I think you guys are spot on with like branded customer experience, and taking, for a while, it was like, take the Shopify transactional that's like just, basic, prompt, put those into Klaviyo. And now it's like, people check their shipping, tracking, fulfillment 6-7 times. How do you build that into a branded experience as well? So all those various touch points. So I know it's a lot, but like those are, I'd say like the core, stack when we're looking at things. Then every client's going to have some unique use cases where they want to run like, advanced like upsell personalization. Maybe it's a rebuy or wiser, things of that nature too. So.
Yeah, no, really appreciate you running through that. I think a lot of times we don't get like really in the weeds on specific tools. So that's really helpful, not just to us, but obviously to the audience as well. And a lot of those third-party apps as well, like we work really closely with. And I think there's always the idea that you remain somewhat agnostic, because a client might have a need that you need to sort of fill in a flash, and it might not be the typical preferred solution or the one that you integrate best with from our perspective, but we still need to be able to serve that client. So while we certainly have like preferred partners, like it sounds like you do, we also are very agnostic and sort of an open platform to be able to accommodate whatever the rest of our merchant stacks look like.
I think you kind of have to, right? You got to be transparent, agnostic, do what's best for the client. I mean, unfortunately, we do have clients that are not on Shopify. So we have to work in BigCommerce and Magento and, other tools as well. So, we always provide the recommendations, but, it's more challenging for our team because there's a lot of different technologies and nuance within that. But we ultimately do want to do what's best for the client.
Right. Exactly. I also love the Mudwater example for a very specific reason. I think a lot of times when merchants come to us these days, and this required like educating the market, they come to us like, oh, we can turn this cost center into a revenue channel. And that is 100% true, but that's almost like the more sophisticated or advanced value that the branded order tracking experience can bring. I think that in like just naturally, the first thing that brands should actually be thinking about in that is setting their customers up for success and educating them on what to expect when that package arrives, so that they can get the most bang for their buck and get that, especially for first-time buyers, making sure that they have a great experience with that first purchase is extremely crucial in driving LTV and getting them to retaining them for the long term. We're doing a lot of research and writing and talking right now about the idea that like the first purchase is actually absolutely crucial, but the second purchase is actually a ton more important in the sense that like almost no brands are first purchase profitable anymore. So if you don't drive that second purchase, if that first experience is not fantastic, you risk literally losing money on all the inputs that you just put in, not just money, but time. And resources on everything that you did to drive that person to your site and to get them to convert in the first place. So I love the Mudwater example that they're educating their customers on what the product is and what they should expect when they get it and how to best utilize it. Very similar use case with Caraway. Caraway like realized early on that a lot of their newly acquired customers were literally ruining the pans because they weren't caring for them properly. And so their tracking page experience started by just being, here's what to expect when your awesome pans arrive, here's how to cook with them, and here's how to care for them so that they can get the most longevity and use out of these not cheap, but well worth it, right? Cooking
Yeah.
utensils and items. So I absolutely love that case and that use case, and think that it
Yeah,
should.
and you bring up like two, I think, really important points. One, you want to get ahead of it. So we had a brand I won't mention a few years ago when it was like at the height of COVID and shipping delays and everything else, and they hid behind it. They didn't really mess it. And I think you then see the opposite of like a Nike at that time was like, look, your product is going to be delayed. Here's our best estimate, but we don't know, and here's why, and here's and it was so thorough, and that was in the abandoned cart series, and like that. So they were negatively impacting conversion so that they could, because they knew the lifetime value, the customer lifetime value was so important to them that they were willing to sacrifice a little bit of that conversion so they didn't have where, the brand that we were working with like hid behind it. They had to like triple their customer service staff because they weren't talking about it. So they were answering all these things around like shipping delays and why is my product not here? Because they gave no information or indicator, on the front end. So I think like over communicating and really making sure that the Caraway example, the Mudwaters of the world that I think truly care about their customers. They want to have that experience and enhance it so they're looking in the long run. And then I think the second part is really why we focus on a lot of this is there's so many inputs and data like we've talked about where it's really hard where the cost for acquiring customers is more expensive than it's ever been. And I tell clients this, we help increase conversion. I'm like, I can increase your conversion guaranteed tomorrow. Just run a 50% off sale.
Yeah. Right.
But what is the impact of that going to have? And so we have to look at like 30 to 40 metrics that we feel like tell this story. And it's a lot to kind of come through, but conversion is not the only thing. And neither is like percentage of revenue or like CAC. Like, unfortunately, you have to look at contribution margin and you have to look at lifetime value and AOV and repeat purchase rate and all these other inputs to really be able to tell the story. And I get it. I like sympathize with brands. Like they're like, who is going to do this? I can't afford to hire a full-time data analyst just to make, heads or tails of these things. So those are, that's what kind of came to mind as you were riffing on that. I think it's, incredibly relevant for these brands to do both of those things to be able to figure that out.
100%. Real quick question before we move on to the rebrand, because I definitely want to get into that a little bit. Do you use any tool to measure the most important metrics that you feel that brands should track and relay that back to them and sort of optimize based on them? Or is that something that you've either come up with on your own in like an Excel sheet? I'm just curious how you measure this because of what we were talking about earlier, right? Your attribution is really hard in general across all the 20 apps and platforms that our clients are using. So how do you think about and measure that?
It's not an easy answer. For us personally, what we kind of use is there's a lot of these, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, but like business intelligence, like BI tools, data tools, Google Analytics and everything else. So there's the Northbeams of the world, Dacities, Triple Whale, that I think are solving kind of aspects of it that are doing a really good job. I am a advisor and investor in a company called Brightflow that does a little bit more of like predictive cash flow analytics. And then they have like cash that they can tap into across like channels and marketplaces, which is nice. So there's like a plug there, but again, you kind of have to pull it all together. The source of truth for us still is Google Analytics, but you have to like really understand it for the platform. One, and this is what we see, unfortunately, that's why we recommend Elevar a lot of times is they don't even have it set up properly. So Facebook is telling them one thing, Shopify is telling them another, and GA is like, whoa. Like, no, both of these aren't actually, kind of accurate. So we make sure that the inputs are right. They're tracking the right conversions and the right goals. And then we do every recommendation that we make. It is about 40 different kind of like metrics that help support the overall goal. Clients come to us and say, how do we increase our customer lifetime value? Or, in the case of Mudwater, how do we decrease churn? Or how do we decrease cost of acquisition? So we have those like overarching goals, but then we feel like there's 30 to 40, kind of indicators that are going to help build that, story and really work. But ultimately it's a little bit of a Excel sheet, Google Analytics, because there's not one tool that does everything, unfortunately, for us.
Yeah, I'm always curious to hear how people like yourself thinking about that measurement. I actually saw a very quick demo of Dacity this week because I connected with their partnerships leader in Toronto for Unite. And so we had a follow-up call. And I was blown away, honestly, by how much data that they're collecting and the insights they're able to collect. I haven't, I talked to Triple Whale early on in my tenure here. I didn't get as in the weeds in terms of what in terms of what their solution is. I'm sure that it's similar in terms of use case. But it's not something that's like a super obvious partnership. So we'll see where it goes in terms of that. But either way, it was really, really cool to see.
Northbeam's doing some stuff. I think they're mostly focused on like paid, and I think they keep adding features to focus on a little bit more like holistically because of the attribution issues and kind of everything else. And we've onboarded a few different brands on Audacity and been really happy with them. So it's hard. There's unfortunately maybe there'll be like mergers or kind of things of that nature, but right now. Yeah, I mean, some brands we have like 4 or 5 data tools, and so even I'm like, who's using this?
Right,
like, who's actually leveraging this data, and then they're building everything in Tableau or Looker. It's a lot just to kind of make heads or tails of what's actually going on. So,
yeah, absolutely. Cool. So let's get into the rebrand a little bit. PCR now Fireside. Tell us the thought process behind that. What sparked the idea to rebrand, and what changes, if any, there will be from a tactical and go-to-market standpoint for your clients and for your business.
Yeah. So I mean, the original name was. What does PCR stand for? It was promote, convert, retain. It was like our strategy around like digital. And so we promote your business, we convert them and retain them. We then shifted it because we didn't do the promote anymore with the evolution of the business, and got a little creative in terms of using our like formula where it was like profit equals conversion plus retention. So we think the best way to impact bottom line, it was a little stretch, but we made it work. And luckily, I have a friend who's like a brilliant brand strategist. He's worked with Anheuser-Busch to Nike, like all these big brands when he was at Anomaly. And he's like, I feel a disconnect. Like you don't live and breathe, PCR and everything else. And I was like, you're right. He's like, well, let me help you. And I'm like, well, I can't afford to pay what you probably normally charge all these Fortune 50. And he's like, I'll do it for you for free. I was like, that sounds great. Wow. So he went through, this exercise to dive deep and understand like who we are, what we do, our values. And, he started with this idea around, I just feel this like hospitality element to what you guys do and how a brand kind of engages in a relationship with their customers. And like, yes, there's like all these hard, cold tools of like, data and technology and everything else, but like you're really using all that to unlock like the warmth of a relationship that, the customer has with the product, the customer has with the brand, what you have with your clients. I was like, exactly. Like that is so, true. And he's like, what about Fireside? Like, it's like, it goes back hundreds of years, if not thousands of years of like inviting strangers by the fire, telling stories, kind of connecting on a deeper level. And, couple of days went by and I didn't say anything. And then I swear to God, I just maybe went over my head and I'm like, I got it. Fireside. Like, are you serious? Like scroll up like on our gosh. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. Sorry. I'm not trying to take credit, but
subconscious there. It's really fooling you.
Luckily he had a digital track footprints of what we actually said. And so that, and so, for us, it's not just changing the name. I think it's a lot of it. It is our approach. Like we have clients come to us and say, we just need email campaigns and, and we're not that. Our focus really is either high growth, digitally native brands like a Mudwater that we have all this data, we have all this technology, we have all this, but we don't truly want to we don't understand the customer, kind of relationship and how we can leverage that more fully to do all these amazing things. Two, actually a lot of businesses that are like non-native to the space. So think, old retailers that are on like maybe a Salesforce commerce cloud that want to get into Shopify and everything else, and or figure out D2C as a more important part of their strategy, to authors, to media publications. So we found like a really good niche where we build a strategic framework to leverage all these different things, the data, the tools, the relationship, the communication, to enhance that overall, kind of customer experience. And we feel like those are the things that brands need to stand for in order to weather a lot of what's going on right now in the macroeconomic climate and everything else. That's how you start to think about like building a moat for the business. So yeah, launched last week.
Wow,
I think,
congrats.
just stoked. And yeah, the last part I always kind of joke is now I don't have to say, PCR, not the COVID test too. So that's even an added bonus as well. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a great exercise. And yeah, I'm just really thankful for my buddy, kind of taking us through that.
Yeah, that's so cool. Do you feel it kind of sounds like this was just like the natural evolution? Do you feel like your clients and prospective merchants that you're looking to work with should expect a different approach from here, or is it very similar to pre-rebrand and more of just like I said, a natural evolution?
I think it's a little natural, but it's very, very intentional. Like I actually did the cliche, like rented a cabin up in the woods in Blue Ridge and did like, a vision board and like what I want. And what was happening a little bit, we like fully jumped into e-commerce, but then we were just like, just a couple people to do emails for them or, optimize their website. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I've done this for 15 years. I've never been motivated to like, I got to be making millions of dollars and do all this. Like what I really unlocked there was like partnership and like, and I think we used to do it where you want us for email or you want us for the web or you want like a project. All that went away. And now we really are their digital partner. And we look at these big goals or challenges they're faced with. And we build, we do an audit, we build a framework and a roadmap. I'm like, here's what we're going to do to be able to unlock that. That's not going to fit everybody. Some people just call us now and they're like, we need someone just to optimize our email flows. We're like, yeah, that's unfortunately not us. We need to look at the whole ecosystem, because if we don't have access to like what customer service is doing or what the website's doing, and just looking at things in like isolation, I don't feel like we can do right by the client. And it allows us to, I think, my team is just, they're such like badasses that I feel like it's doing us a disservice to kind of like come in and do checklist work. Like my head of strategy was leading the e-commerce strategy for Victoria's Secret for a decade. She's unbelievable. Wow. We have a retention manager that was, managing 2 million contacts in a database and building like crazy flows across app, push, email, SMS. And so we want to tackle tough problems. We want to tackle, kind of complexity. So all that intentions come out. And I swear it's like, never really believed in the secret or law of attraction, but we've been so busy. Like we're only 9 people, but we've onboarded like big accounts, really tough problems. And it's humming. It's feeling really good. So I think to your original question, yes, a little organic, but I think we put a line in the sand. I was like, what do I care about? What do I want to build as a team? And I think we're starting to do that. And Fireside just acted as a catalyst to kind of even further enhance it.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Real quick, Drew, how long did that? I'm just curious. How long did that like rebranding process take?
Well, there's been as an entrepreneur, it's everyone says your greatest strengths, your greatest weakness. Like I'm never short of ideas. So I've and I'm actually notoriously very bad at naming. You'll laugh at this. 15 years ago, my original business name, which is still my legal entity in Florida, is Internet Success Incorporated. That's we will make you successful on the internet.
Great branding.
So I did that to PCR, and I was just never really like, PCR worked for a little while. I started a separate consultancy at one point, and there's a whole nother, I started an animal pet like CBD company with some like raised money, bought a bunch of stuff. And I had another company called Openness where I was doing consulting, and then I had the agency. So to say it's been in the works for a while, it's been in the works for a while. I think it's nice to have it ladder up to the core focus. I have a business coach, and I think the majority of what he does now is tells me, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Just tells me I can't essentially do anything but focus on growing this business, which is really smart. So yeah, I'd say like, gosh, probably 5-6 years with a whole left and right turns and curveballs, kind of, thrown in the mix.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I feel like it's a great idea to have a business coach. I think just if nothing else, then to tell you to like stay focused on the things that matter. Because I feel that so much, that there's so much opportunity. It's really hard, especially in our space. Like 5,000 apps, like that's 5,000 potential partners for us. Maybe 100 competitors at this point. Like, what I mean? So it's really hard sometimes to stay focused, and I think that's a great lesson as well.
I reread Peter Thiel's book 0 to 1. Like all the time when he was at PayPal, he's notorious for like people would come in that he was managing, and he would give them like one thing to work on, the one thing, and then they would come in and they have a problem. He's like, so how does this help support you tackling this, the thing I gave you? He's like, well, it doesn't. He's like, well, I'm not going to talk to you. Like, come to me when you actually have it. So that's like very helpful. But yeah, the coach has been incredible just to be able to have it. And I'm fortunate. I have employees. I mean, we've been at it for 15 years. It's like, is digital my thing? I'm always like, oh, I got all these shiny objects and everything else. And 2 of my employees have been with me for a decade plus, are like, Drew, just please, just focus on this. There's a big opportunity. And I've done that over the last couple of years, and it's paid off. We've grown pretty substantially, and again, not in headcount. I could care less. It's more in terms of like overall growth, employee growth, in terms of the team and the development, profitability, other things like that. That just mean a little bit more to me than stroking my ego for how many people we have and stuff like that.
No, that's great to hear. And I am shocked to hear that you are doing all of this with 9 employees, but I think to your point, it's like that just means more growth for them as individuals, rather than for the owner of the agency, who's just striving to say he's got 100 employees. So
and I love it. I mean, the thing I'm most proud of is true, and everyone always points at like culture and everything else, but like we have an employee that's 22 years old. She's already gotten 3 promotions in a year, because she's just a badass, and she's growing and she's developing, and there's no like just, 1 year later you get your 3% raise. I'm like, you deserve it. Like, you are showing that. And I mean, I was shocked she was 22. She joined us when she was 21, but it doesn't matter. Like, she's doing the work and being able to develop that. And we do a bunch of things with like that a smaller company wouldn't. Like, we give round trip flights anywhere in the world on Christmas for, people that have been with us even less than a year, and we do health insurance, and we do the whoops, and we do all this other stuff. So I like want to keep reinvesting in the team, and again, I tell everybody in the interview process, like, you don't need to get 3 people under you to get this next kind of promotion, whatever. I'd rather give it to you versus giving it to a new person coming in. So we're very intentional with like the team size and things like that, so that we can do more with less. So
very cool. Okay, just a couple minutes left. We'd be remiss to have the Retention Chronicles podcast talk about retention. So, and I know you've mentioned it a couple times, but let's double click for a second here. Tell us what retention means to you in the new format of the agency and new approach, and what the most important drivers of it. And if you want to sort of take the lens of, what you feel is an area that brands regularly neglect or miss out on when it comes to retention, I think that's sort of a good way to frame it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's the catalyst, and we've done it for so long. And for me, I was always like, a lot of people try and, kind of play down like email and everything else. I'm like, it still drives 30-50% of your total revenue in a lot of cases. And I think it's easier to focus on the sexy, which are like the influencers or the content or the social media. And so retention, what we really think about, I think a lot of people get lost in, clicks and opens and everything else, but you got to realize like there's a real person at the other end of this communication. And I think they're like, it's the cliche. There's a New Yorker cartoon where it's like everyone around in a boardroom. They're like, you're telling us every time we send an email, we make revenue. Let's send an email every hour. Like, this is great. And, I think for us, like, we want to humanize that experience as much as possible. And I think that just gets lost. And I think it's easy to focus on, all these other things that are external, but like, if you don't have your house in order, it does not matter, how effective your paid ads are on Facebook or how shitty your, I don't know if we can cuss, but sorry, your product experience is. You're just going to keep chasing, kind of your tail a little bit. And I think that's what's unfortunately happened. We've had brands we've worked with that thought they were going to get that next round of funding for growth, and it disappeared. And so retention to me means that the warmth of that, the customer relationship and building that foundation from the product to your website, to your communication, all those things are what is going to be that vote of confidence that the consumer has with your brand. And so that's like the 10,000 foot view, at least from like our approach. And we really try and we do the qualitative research, the survey. Mudwater does another, give them a plug. Like, they do an incredible job of like, why did you cancel? What is wrong with kind of product? And they do surveys on a regular basis just to check in, to see. And Shane is the founder, very passionate about that, which is so cool to see in this day and age. And I think that's why they've grown so much. So I think what we see happen is they're just like, okay, check a box, or 2 email campaigns this week. Did we send out an SMS? Did we do, whatever it may be? And they just don't map out the journey of the actual customer and understand the friction. Like, have they talked to customer service? Have they answered support tickets to see what's going on? Have they tried to check out and make a purchase on the product and realize how hard it is? Like, have they gotten the product delivered? I just purchased from a clothing brand purchased 2 weeks ago. They have not confirmed my email. They have not told me that my order is on the way or when an estimated shipment. I'm like, how are you doing this in this day and age? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, I think there's a lot. Obviously I could talk for days about it, but I think just getting back to like, who are your customers and what are their challenges and how are you helping them solve that? And how do you make sure that you reduce that friction as much as possible to, that surprise and delight, all those things that you kind of hear in the conference you go to, but I just don't think brands are practicing it as a fundamental, kind of use case for their business.
Right. Yeah, no, I think you hit on a lot of the things that are always top of mind for us. Some new stuff as well. Do you, with all of the, fundamental shifts in the market, in our specific market, but the broader like world economy as well, with privacy changes and GDPR, iOS updates, inflation, all of these factors that go into rising CAC. Do you feel that they're and also affecting retention, of course, as well, especially with the increased competition and new brands popping up every day, because it's easier for that to happen now than ever before. Do brands need to adjust their retention strategy at all for the future?
I think 100%. I mean, I think, again, the day and age of like acquiring customers on the cheap on Facebook and everything else, it's just gone. And I think if you ever want to look at a playbook and just go through their website experience, I was fortunate to like meet these guys and like hear them speak. I don't know if you've seen it, but My Obvi, it's a collagen brand. And, they sell to women and they're 2 guys and they don't hide behind it or try and do whatever. Like, they own it. They have this like private Facebook group of tens of thousands of people. They have ambassadors where you can get free product for life. Anytime they're launching a new product, they say, hey, are there, flavors or things, and they poll their audience first. And you go through the checkout, everything is like customer obsessed. I've never seen 2 guys that care more about their customer and meeting them. But like, they do it because they know it's fundamental to the business. Like giving the free product is like, if they're doing referrals and all this other stuff, like that's worth its weight in gold. And I just really resonate with that as like a tactic where they still spend the money on TikTok and Facebook and everything else, but like they know their core customer because the customer's telling them and they're actually having conversations. They do live Q&As, I think once a week. And you can just like, anybody on their Facebook group can like chime in and like, what's going on, da, 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 da. And they just, so I think it makes acquisition easier if you have the funnel and the retention engine really, really, really humming. Because then you can put people in that funnel and then you can convert them, but they're going to stay. To your point, it's very difficult to be profitable in that first purchase. And to get the second and the third and everything else, you just have to have those fundamentals, I think, in place. Otherwise, you're going to be, kind of dead in the water.
Yeah, we recently on a podcast talked about retention as an acquisition channel, and I think that's exactly what you're getting on. Like, and I heard basically in synopsis, I heard community basically, which is something not only do we love to see our brands do, it's something that we're talking about doing at Malomo as well, is building a more intentional community around our offering and the retention space as a whole in e-commerce. So a lot of similar thoughts there. Couldn't agree more. Okay, we're at time. Normally we don't go the full hour, but I knew we would spend a good amount of time up top after that was your good personal news. Real quick closeout, Drew, and thanks so much for all these awesome insights. You've obviously had an amazing career so far. You've got a team that you're obviously super proud of and doing big things. What do you sort of, one or two things that you attribute the success to this point to? Any advice that you would give for people, whether it's in the space or just starting out in their careers or wanting to up level their careers, that's helped you get to where you're at today?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the most fundamental, like foundational level, it's people, and it's going to sound like the cliche, kind of talking point, but like when I, took that step back, looked at Fireside, all this other stuff, it truly was like the relationships, and it's the and the people that we work with. I have the fortune, of running this company where it's like I can choose who we hire, I can choose who we work with as clients, and I think if they're being disrespectful, to my staff, like that's just, there's no money, worth it. I went through that, the Christmas Eve story and getting yelled at. I'm like, I'm fortunate now to be a little bit more like matured and progressed, but like I would go back and sacrifice that additional, kind of client or whatever the money is to be able to do that. And I think what we have built is, and it's so amazing when you get all the right people on the bus and you're moving in the right direction, where it's the team and it's this ecosystem. It's our existing team. That's where it starts, kind of first and foremost. And that's hardworking for sure, but like compassionate, empathetic. And we just hired someone, a couple of weeks ago, and she's like, I was on Zooms where like, in my previous company where, it was just dead silence. No one talked, no one cared. She's like, you guys talk for like 10 minutes before you even like talk business. Like you really do like each other and like working with you. And I don't think that has to be a prerequisite, but like, for me, I'm like, I want to work with people that I enjoy, I learn stuff from and that are, kind of caring. And then I think the next layer out is the clients and who are they appreciating, the work that we're doing and the value. I mean, we don't want them just to like us for liking it. We want to deliver on the results, but that mutual respect. And then I think it's guys like you and the team and people, where it's even the vendors and it's the ecosystem. That could be freelancers to the apps. Like the last thing we want to do is have a great relationship with the staff on our team and the client, and then we introduce them to a partner and they're disrespectful or they're these different things. So I think, I don't know, it's definitely long-winded, but like for me, the people fuel everything, and I'm very, very conscientious of that, with the team, and I think that has made us successful because of that coming through in every touch point communication. We do a bunch of stuff. We don't have like nickel and dime if things are out of scope. It's like we want a deep relationship with and that's what I even train my team and account managers of, like, build rapport. I mean, and because I did it 15 years ago, because I was an absolutely terrible account manager, because my results were so bad, but like I was so good at rapport and building friendships and like everything else. They're like, Drew, and they tell me all the time, they're like, I don't really know why we're paying you to do what you do because the results aren't good. We just really like you and we know you're going to fix it and make it right. So, it's all those little things that I think, kind of come up to have that, kind of compassion within the team and things like that too. And the last would just be like the focus. Like I think Naval Ravikant, the famed kind of like angel investor and, he's like a little bit of a philosopher around business and other things. He's like, it takes 10 years to build a career in anything. And this day and age, it's like, millennials and younger, it's like, oh my God, I haven't gotten this promotion or I'm not making $1 million. And they're like, you're 24 years old, just like,
right.
Like, it takes a little bit of time to do these, where our grandparents or parents are like slogging away for 30, 40 years in a career. So I think having that patience and looking at, the long term of like what you're trying to accomplish and give yourself a little bit of grace there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Love both of those. One of my closest advisors just told me like 2 weeks ago, never forget like the most underrated thing in your career that you can practice is patience. Yeah. And it sticks. Like I'm so bad about it, to your point. It was a great reminder, and this is another good one. And then your point about people, it's literally why we start the podcast with personal. Yeah. Good person. It's why we end it with things that you would recommend to others in terms of growing their career, because all of the stuff in the middle is it doesn't happen without those two things. We think so. Thanks for sharing that, Drew. Really appreciate having you on. Thanks for going over with us, and I know that we'll be in touch soon.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, Drew.
Yeah, thank you.